Solo Leveling's anime is finally here, and many of you have likely heard about this series over the years as being one of the best webtoons. And since it's gained that title, a lot of amazing works have come out since then that people would say are way better. But here we are at the start of a new series, so let's start a strong foundation by going over all of the basics, like how the world is constantly changing in the Solo Leveling world. In this universe, humanity is constantly under the threat of dungeons, which first appear in their reality as portals to another realm. The first time this occurred, you can assume that it took humans a while to figure out what exactly is going on, but eventually they learn that if these portals are left alone, they actually shatter into a gate that leads into the world of the dungeon, letting the monsters and bosses within leak out into the real world. This event, which the anime explains is called a dungeon break, is something you can definitely look forward to as things get insane in the series, but because of the constant threat of dungeons appearing, humanity has come together with a formation of the Hunters, who are talented fighters or skilled healers who all go into the dungeons to hunt down the monsters and save reality. However, on one of these missions in a certain dungeon, we see as our main character Sung Jinwoo, who is the world's weakest hunter, meets the worst possible fate. In Solo Leveling, the one character that it's probably safe for you to get attached to, no matter how much it didn't seem like it in episode 1, is our main character Sung Jinwoo. And while I'm really not a fan of his design early on in the series, I think it's pretty cool to see him before he becomes an extreme badass, because that's exactly the kind of story that we're in for. In Solo Leveling, we're gonna watch the weakest, bottom of the bottom E-class hunter going for the top as he clears dungeons to try and save his sick mom with his good intuition and wits. But as you might have seen in episode 1 and 2 of the anime, things go very wrong for Sung Jinwoo, or it seems. Because despite everything that he goes through against the boss statues, he manages to wake up an entirely new set of powers based around a leveling system that will allow him to grow more and more powerful if he struggles enough and actually earns his power-ups. And in general, I know this community and know they love cool edgelord characters with powers related to shadows and all the other aspects of Jinwoo's abilities, so as a person who is still reading through the source material, it'll be fun to experience the anime with you all at the same time that I'm learning more about the lore and sharing that all with you as well. And look forward to seeing this weak boy with just a cheap dagger to his name becoming that guy. In Solo Leveling, when Sung Jinwoo is almost slaughtered by a room full of statues, he accepts a mysterious quest that appears in front of his face as he sees it as a second chance at life. And after this happens, his body radiates a bright light as he's completely healed back to normal. When he's found, the room is completely empty, like all of the statues had vanished, and since he slept for 3 days, eventually the inspectors of the Korean Hunters Guild arrive and visit Jinwoo in his hospital room, explaining the situation to him and telling him that they only have one theory on what they think happened. That without realizing it, he defeated all of the statues himself by having something called a double awakening. When a person becomes a hunter, they undergo a process called awakening, which sets the stats that they have and pretty much the level of power that they can expect to remain at, with some diligent workers moving up maybe a single rank over their entire careers. Some hunters, however, undergo a phenomena called double awakening, where they awaken again, and those hunters have been known to shoot up in rank dramatically as they gain insane powers or buff. However, after scanning his magical power, they leave thinking that this can't be the case for Jinwoo. However, little did they know that his awakening allowed him to become a player in life like it was a game, as his next quest hits his inbox and a new story unfolds. In Solo Leveling, we've talked about how Sung Jinwoo gets his life saved by accepting a mysterious quest that pops up in a window that only he can see when he's inside of a dungeon. However, in the beginning, as much as Jinwoo wants to pretend like this isn't all that serious, when he gets the first actual quest after the dungeon is over, he quickly realizes that he can't just ignore this power system. First off, Jinwoo is pretty much a video game character now in his reality, with him getting daily quests and unlocking secret quests that all come with various rewards and can grant him enough power to become truly strong. The flip side of this is ignoring the quest though, and when you don't complete a quest because you ignored it or otherwise completely failed, Jinwoo is sent into a penalty realm, which places him alone in a dungeon against different enemies. Near the beginning of the series, we see this happen as he gets sent into a massive sandy wasteland as he's chased down by a poison-fanged giant sand centipede. And penalties can actually be pretty punishing, because as weak as he is for a first-time penalty, he was still expected to survive against this thing for 4 entire hours, meaning one way or another, the quests are going to make you more powerful if you're able to survive either completing them or the punishment for not doing them. But it's not just quests. Jinwoo's powers come with a host of different menus and ways to be abused, but in Solo Leveling, our main character Sung Jinwoo starts off extremely weak, but one of the most useful things we have is actually a status window that his role as a player allows him to activate. And this window actually gives us a look at Jinwoo's stats like it would for any other character in a game. Now, Jinwoo's stats are a 16 in strength and a 10 in every other category, from agility to sense, vitality, and intelligence. Even his max MP is 10, and he only has 100 HP as a level 1 character with no job or title. Now, these numbers may mean nothing if we have nothing to reference them to, but when Jinwoo was tested by the guild inspectors, they determined that his power was 10 when the average power for the weakest hunters was about a 70. If we assume that, like in most games, MP scales of the intelligence for Jinwoo, then we can assume that 10 points are the absolute lowest values in 5 out of his 6 stats, meaning Jinwoo truly is the weakest, pathetic thing that ever did crawl into and out of a dungeon. However, as he continues to clear his daily quests and earn attribute points, this will continue to change, so lock in here as we keep you updated on his progress. In solo leveling, as Sung Jinwoo starts doing his daily quest and starts picking up a few rewards, eventually he's given a small key as a reward that says they can open an instant dungeon in the nearby train station. So he takes a leave from the hospital to go there and give it a look, wondering what exactly an instant dungeon would even entail. This ends up being a big mistake as he thinks that he'll be able to run away if it looks too dangerous, but as soon as he goes into the entrance, it's sealed in behind him as he feels a really dangerous presence in the dark and heads that way all by himself, completely nervous, realizing that this must be a beast dungeon because of the stench as he's attacked by a ferocious red wolf. This giant steel-fanged wolf charges up for a second attack as Jinwoo thinks that even something like this might be way too difficult for him, but as he begins to dodge the wolf over and over, he realizes how light his body feels and starts to do acrobatic tricks against the beast and actually lands a really powerful blow on it, sending it into a nearby metal gate. As Jinwoo starts to realize that the points that he's putting in the strength are really making a difference in his actual body. Now, while he's getting excited for himself, the problem still remains. He isn't strong enough to actually hurt this thing as he continues dodging more and more, and the wolf dungeon continues. In solo leveling, as Jinwoo is struggling in his first instant dungeon all by himself, he tries to think of a way to take down the steel-jawed wolf in front of him and looks into his inventory for anything that can help. It's a good thing that he did because he's able to find the sword that Mr. Kim left behind in the dungeon with the statues, and this blade is forged out of steel and comes with a 10+ attack bonus, showing us how different items could actually raise Jinwoo's stats and make him more powerful, on top of the bonuses he's already giving himself anytime he levels up a stat. Using the sword, Jinwoo slices right through the monster and instantly levels up as he's happy that he's able to even touch his 3 million won sword, which is about $2,300 in the US. Jinwoo wonders if he can put anything in his inventory as the fear melts away and he faces down a horde of these wolves with his sword stuck in the ground. When he's able to get it out, he easily handles both of them by ending them the same way that he ended the original wolf, and at the end of this we get an update on Jin's level 2 stats where we see that his health and MP have doubled, his strength is now at a whopping 20, and all of his other stats have had 1 point placed in them, bringing them up to 11. He also has a max level unknown passive ability and a few others like muscularity and sprint, but I know we just can't go by and not explain what that mysterious unknown passive ability is, so we'll get into that soon. In solo leveling, after being able to take out a few steel wolves and leveling up, Jinwoo gets more and more confident, and we see him standing with Mr. Kim's sword as it begins to fall apart and break, because no matter how high quality a weapon is, their durability is always limited. Still, Jinwoo thanks Mr. Kim for leaving the sword behind because it worked out great today. We see that in the instant dungeon, Jinwoo is given the title Wolf Slayer, which gives him a passive ability that grants him 40% increased XP from beast-type monsters in the future. After he clears the first area of wolves, he finds a bunch of useful items and some new clothes for later, but after taking his new Hearthstone and putting it in his inventory, he debates on whether or not to stay in the dungeon longer and ultimately decides that he might never get an easy chance to get stronger like this again, so slash after slash, we see as Jinwoo tears through beasts and levels up again and again, thinking to himself that it's getting easier and easier as you see dark lightning starting to gather around his body at times during his training, but finally, Jinwoo realizes that he's gotten strong enough that training against these mobs isn't going to make him any stronger, so he starts to head to the deepest part of the dungeon to fight a really strong enemy that he senses in the dark. In solo leveling, we've discussed how Jinwoo's powers make him a player in life, which comes with a lot of fun and interesting changes in his life, but one interesting thing about Jinwoo's powers is his sensibility, which is a stat that he can keep raising to detect the power level of enemy creatures. In the world of this anime, we know that hunters are ranked from E to S rank, but for Jinwoo, he has his own ranking system for monsters because he can actually see the name of the monster above their head, and the color of the names depends on the power of the creature. If a creature is weak compared to Jinwoo, it'll have a white name. If it's a stronger creature, it'll have an orange name, and finally, if it's a really strong enemy, it'll have a red name, meaning the redder a name is, the more dangerous the creature. This allows Jinwoo to always have an idea where he stands in a battle. However, these colors can be deceptive. For instance, if a monster has a special ability or transformation that can completely change the color of its name. Hopefully, this is something you pay attention to in the anime, and let me know what else I should cover in this series. After training as much as he possibly could in the instant dungeon that he unlocked using his powers, Sung Jinwoo heads down towards the deepest level of the dungeon to face the boss, and as he gets smacked around, he's disappointed to see that he didn't level up enough to change the boss's name from orange to white. As he looks on, we see a giant bluish purple viper getting ready to bite down on him as it curls up as a warning, and Jinwoo picks up his broken sword, but he stares his enemy down, realizing that no sword is going to be able to pierce through those massive scales, and that likely means that none of his punches will work either. Still, when the snake attacks him, he tries anyway while dodging, hoping to find a weak spot, but realizes that he needs an attack that's fast but can actually pack a punch. As the giant viper coils around the room, it begins to catch Jinwoo off guard and knock him onto the ground, making him scream about how he thought he got stronger, but he's still in the same situation as before. As he tries to fight back again, he promises to get stronger, and we see that dark lightning energy surrounding Jin's body again as he starts to get really serious and desperate and realizes that no matter how scary this thing is, it's nowhere near as scary as the statues in that other dungeon, so he presses on. In solo leveling, when Jinwoo gets stuck in a boss battle against a swamp ruler, which is a massive blue snake, he snaps when he realizes his own weakness and lunges at the snake, cutting it across one side of its mouth with his broken sword. This causes the snake to attack him at a weird angle, with him swiftly avoiding it, and as he does, Jinwoo grabs onto the snake with his full strength and begins to squeeze his arms as hard as he can, as we see the snake's scales beginning to shatter like concrete. He begins to slam the head of the snake around into the ceiling and floor, trying to finally end it, but when it opens his mouth ready to bite down on him, all he can do is scream and keep pushing as hard as he can, as for a second we cut away to the hospital that he was admitted to, where two doctors discuss how he still hasn't come back and whether or not they should be worried. A more experienced doctor says that everything should be okay, because even the weakest hunters are like monsters compared to normal humans, as we finally come back to Jinwoo and see that he's leveled up 3 times all at once and not only defeated the boss, but the reward that he got might be even better than the levels. In solo leveling, after defeating the swamp ruler, which was a massive blue poison fang Rasaka, not only does Jinwoo level up, but more importantly, he's given 2 reward drops from completing this dungeon. The first is a bag of Rasaka's venom, which is an A-class item, and the pouch contains a purified sample of the snake's venom, which would give Jinwoo the snake's hardened scales for a short time, but will lower his strength in exchange. This might come in handy in the future, but the other item that will definitely be handy is Jinwoo's trademark Rasaka Fang dagger. This awesome looking dagger that you've definitely seen him with in art somewhere is a dagger made from Rasaka's fang, and it has 2 really impressive abilities. First off, Rasaka's fang has the chance to paralyze anything that Jinwoo hits it with for a short time, meaning now Jinwoo has a much higher chance of survival in most situations. On top of this, the dagger also has a bleed effect, which will cause the enemy to lose 1% of their health every 1 second once it's activated, meaning if it were to go on for 100 seconds uninterrupted, it would be able to defeat any enemy that can suffer the bleed condition. This is only the first weapon Jinwoo has gotten from one of these dungeons, but don't worry, because soon we'll discuss every cool item he picks up over the course of the series. In solo leveling, one of the first characters that we meet after Sung Jinwoo makes it out of the double dungeon is a representative of the monitoring branch of the Hunters Association, a man named Woojin Chul. Now, in episode 3 of the anime, we see him asking Jinwoo a few questions about what exactly happened in the dungeon, and it may seem like he'll be out of the picture after Jinwoo fails his magic reevaluation in the hospital, but this guy is really smart, and as an A-rank hunter who was pretty much touching the status of S-rank, he's really perceptive when it comes to anything relating hunters, dungeons, and monsters. So I wouldn't expect him to be going anywhere anytime soon, and it's a good thing that he's such an expert because his job is pretty much the handler of all the hunters in the entire country, making sure laws are being followed and that each and every dungeon is attended to before a dungeon break happens. This means that Jin Chul pretty much knows everybody there is to know, so to get like him, make sure you stick around because there's so many more characters to explain. However, just know that this guy is way more impressive than he seems at first glance, so anytime that Jinwoo makes a mistake or does something wrong, know that he's going to be right around the corner, ready to get to the bottom of what exactly is going on in his broken little world. In solo leveling season 1, so far they've been very faithful to the manhwa, but in episode 3 many fans noticed a change that actually makes a lot of sense, and that would be how Woojin Chul's assistant was actually swapped with another character that we readers know all too well, a man named Kang Tae-Shik. Kang is a B-ranked hunter who works in the monitoring guild, and in the webtoons, one of the first times we meet him, we see that part of his job involves trying to rehabilitate prisoners who have hunter abilities by taking them into dungeons to prove their worth. Since this character is going to be pretty important early on in the season, it makes sense why they decided to make him Jin Chul's partner to more easily wrap him into the early events of the story, and for those of you who are wondering just what this guy is capable of, he's actually really powerful since Kang is an assassin class hunter, and he not only uses daggers to pierce his enemies, but he also has a unique ability to completely erase his presence. But that's something we'll explain a little further down the line. If you get this short to 1,500 likes, we'll start telling the story of how this guy causes a major incident for Sung Jinwoo, but all in all, I'm interested in seeing why the characters get placed in different parts of the story so that we can meet them earlier, sort of like a few other characters we're going to be talking about very soon. Expect to see Kang Tae-Shik rearing his ugly face again pretty soon in the anime, and just remember, don't trust a word he says. In solo leveling, one of the first characters that we meet after Sung Jinwoo makes it out of the double dungeon is a representative of the monitoring branch of the Hunters Association, a man named Woojin Chul. Now, in episode 3 of the anime, we see him asking Jinwoo a few questions about what exactly happened in the dungeon, and it may seem like he'll be out of the picture after Jinwoo fails his magic reevaluation in the hospital, but this guy is really smart, and as an A-rank hunter who was pretty much touching the status of S-rank, he's really perceptive when it comes to anything relating hunters, dungeons, and monsters. So I wouldn't expect him to be going anywhere anytime soon, and it's a good thing that he's such an expert because his job is pretty much the handler of all the hunters in the entire country, making sure laws are being followed and that each and every dungeon is attended to before a dungeon break happens. This means that Jin Chul pretty much knows everybody there is to know, so to get like him, make sure you stick around because there's so many more characters to explain. However, just know that this guy is way more impressive than he seems at first glance, so anytime that Jinwoo makes a mistake or does something wrong, know that he's going to be right around the corner, ready to get to the bottom of what exactly is going on in his broken little world. In solo leveling, since there are hunters running around with superpowers, of course these sorts of people are naturally going to form groups of some kind, and this paired with the threats of the dungeons and gates led to the formation of guilds. The main purpose of a guild is to gather strong hunters so that the guild can make official requests to take care of assigned gates all over the country using one or more different strike squads. These guilds are typically led by an S rank hunter, and we'll get into the different ranks of hunters and how that's determined soon, but the way that guilds work is way more interesting than the why they work. You see, guilds aren't just composed of fighters, they actually have different groups that provide different functions. For instance, every guild has a group known as the Mining Brigade. These people mine mana crystals that are inside of the dungeons, while the hunters are doing battle against the monsters to open up and secure new areas that can be mined. Mana crystals aren't worth quite as much as crystals dropped from monsters, but there can be so many of them in a single dungeon that it makes mining them pretty lucrative. Helping out the Mining Brigade, we also have the Porters, and these are the people who take everything to and from the dungeon. This whole operation has a very delicate balance, but it really makes you appreciate how. We've explained what guilds are in solo leveling, but in Korea there are 5 great guilds that are known as the strongest the country has to offer. First off, we have the Knights Guild, which is actually the weakest out of the 5, and they're the only one that doesn't have an S rank level leader, but they do have the highest number of A ranks out of any guild. On the opposite end of that, we have the Hunters Guild, which actually has 2 S rank members, and these 2 are the Guild Master and Vice Master respectively, but having 2 means they have the most out of every guild on this list. The Fiend Guild, also known as the Reapers, is next up, and this guild actually used to be the #1 guild in all of Korea. However, that changed when their guild actually split into 2, which led to the creation of our next guild, the White Tiger Guild. This is one of the guilds we'll probably see the most of in season 1, since their leader really wants to know everything there is about Sung Jinwoo's strength, but we'll talk about him soon. Lastly, we have the Fame Guild, and beyond the fact that their leader can grow really large and that they typically hire more mages and fighters, not much is actually known about this guild, but next up, let's go a little more in detail. In solo leveling, one of the newest guilds that has pretty quickly risen to power is the White Tiger Guild, led by a man named Yunho, who's pretty famous in Korea for his powers, so much so that his guild is actually named after them, and the same goes for their guild emblem, which is a black tiger with a white aura, but we'll discuss him in more detail in another short. The White Tiger Guild appears early on in the story when they're one of the first ones to notice that something is up with Sung Jinwoo just because of how fast he's clearing gates, and despite the fact that their relationship starts off a little rocky, they quickly become his allies, recognizing the benefit that they receive from being connected to someone as capable as our main character. Every guild has their own quirks or differences, but White Tiger is focused on raising up a strong next generation of hunters, so to that end they take all of their new recruits and throw them straight into dungeons to give them experience on the battlefield. But trust me when I say you're going to want to remember the name of this guild and watch out for their movements, especially with the way the anime might change a few things around. But next, let's discuss that dear leader. In solo leveling, we've described how the White Tiger Guild works and some of their involvement early on in the series. However, let's talk about why they're called the White Tigers and what's going on with their leader. First off, the leader of the White Tiger Guild is named Baek Yunho, a brawly orange-haired man with pointy sideburns, and this man is an S-rank hunter and shouldn't be underestimated at all. Baek is able to transform his body into a wolf-like beast and has complete control over his transformation, so he can decide to only partially transform, or he can slowly work his way up to his massive fully realized form that is so huge it takes up a large section of a forest. Early on in the story, he and his guild figures out just a little bit of Jinwoo's secret, and this causes Baek to constantly try to find where Jinwoo is so that he can understand his power and come to his own conclusion on just what makes Sung so strong. But hopefully, depending on how much they cover in season 1, we'll actually be able to see Baek Yunho in combat and not just a little scrap, because this is one of the characters I'm really excited to see animated when he really gets going. In solo leveling, the world is filled with awakened people called hunters. When someone awakens, their level of power is pretty much set in stone within one of 7 different ranks. So first off, at the bottom of the list, we have E rank hunters who are still pretty much more capable than an average human because at least they have some magic in their body. D rank is the next worst, and this is actually the first rank where you can start making a decent living off the contracts that you'll get, but typically D or E rank hunters join the mining or porting teams since that's safer than getting into battles. When we get to C rank hunters, these are probably the most average out of the bunch, but they can be quite impressive, like Song-chi the fire mage Jinwoo went into the double dungeon with, who before the incident never had any trouble while working in the field. When we get to B rank, we start to see hunters with some extra skills compared to the lower ranks, like Jin-hee the B rank healer who can also cast buffs. However, often in this rank, hunters become overconfident in their abilities and get themselves killed. Lastly, we have A ranks who are strong enough to actually fight most bosses, but before we go S and beyond, let's talk about false rankers. In solo leveling, we've seen a little bit of the process that's involved in trying to determine what hunter rank someone belongs in. However, among hunters, there are also sometimes those who can control the presence of their magical power, and if these people choose to, they can cheat during the hunter evaluation to be ranked lower than they're supposed to be. This can be done for a number of reasons, like a hunter not wanting to become famous despite their amazing powers, because they just don't want all of the attention. But for every hunter doing this for good reasons, there's likely 10 doing it for bad, because false rankers are typically just people who place themselves in a lower rank so that they can be placed in dungeons of low rank hunters and kill them, whether it's for fun or some other reason. In Solo Leveling Season 1, we've already been introduced to a false ranker besides Sung Jinwoo, with Kang Tae-Shik using his job at the Hunter Association as a cover for his illegal activities. But soon we're going to talk about the time that Sung Jinwoo gets trapped inside of a dungeon with a false ranker that has nothing but evil plans for everyone inside of that dungeon. Just get this short to 1500 likes if you want to know about it sooner than later. In Solo Leveling, we've started to explain some of the guilds in Korea, so let's go from the White Tiger Guild to the Hunters Guild, since we actually saw both of the leaders in episode 3 of the anime. The Hunters Guild is led by a man named Choi Jong-in, who it's safe to say is an extremely reputable hunter known well across the nation for his calm nature and fiery abilities befitting his S-rank status. Alongside him, we have the Vice Master of the guild, Miss Cha Hae-in, another S-rank hunter who we've seen doing front flips and loitering around the first few episodes of the series with no clear end goal in sight. Their guild symbol is a combined sword and shield, and because they're the #1 guild in Japan, which is a title that they only recently gained, this guild is typically sent out on some of the most dangerous missions, and they're extremely equipped to handle this because their fame also allows them to be the largest guild in Korea. This massive force of hunters allows them to split their company up into 2 squads, with the S rankers working together in the A squad and the B squad being comprised of only A and B rank hunters. They're an extremely organized and capable guild, and like many of the others, they're going to be interested in recruiting Jinwoo, but do you think he should join them? In Solo Leveling, we've already discussed the Hunters Guild and some of its members, but now it's time to go way more in detail on the leader of the guild, a tall and slender red-haired man who goes by the name of Choi Jong-in. Now, beyond being the leader of the #1 guild in Korea, Choi is known by the title of the Ultimate Hunter, and this is partially because he's the best wielder of fire-type magic in the entire world, which is a big deal when you know that fire magic is also some of the most common magic for someone to awaken in the series. When Jinwoo meets him for the first time, he thinks about a rumor that Choi can destroy an entire building using one of his normal spells, and in fact, it's because Choi's nickname of the greatest hunter that people started calling Jinwoo the world's weakest hunter, since it's always nice to know who the best and worst are. A good example of Choi's powers are during a particular raid later on in the series, where he's the first person sent to touch land on a dangerous island surrounded with monsters. From a helicopter, Mr. Choi uses his fire to snipe away any flyers and even clear the entire path to the dungeon himself, saying that before he used to hear snapping noises when he burned monsters, but now he hears fireworks. Expect to see more of the Ultimate Hunter later. In Solo Leveling, we've discussed the Hunters Guild as well as the leader, Mr. Choi. However, now it's time to talk about the Vice Master of the guild, a woman who goes by the name of Cha Hae-in. And this S-rank warrior isn't just anybody, because she's also known as the strongest woman in the world. Cha Hae is a beautiful woman of short blonde hair who upon first impression is clearly very acrobatic, as we pretty much meet her doing flips to solve crimes and look cool doing it. But whereas the anime has made her look a little extra stoic, in the manhwa, Cha Hae eventually develops into a warm and kind person who would do anything to save her friends or keep a promise with someone she loves. Some interesting things about her are the fact that she can sense a bad smell that only hunters have, and very few people in our entire story have the ability to pick up on this scent. This may seem like a small detail, but it's actually pretty important to her character and how she progresses through the story before ultimately finding her purpose. But another interesting thing to know is that despite being an S-rank hunter, her sword master is a C rank, but she's so skilled with her sword and her movements that she's earned another nickname, the Dancer. If you like her, beware, this one's taken. In Solo Leveling, as awesome and amazing as Sung Jinwoo's powers are, they also come with a pretty big negative as well. If you were given the same chance as Sung Jinwoo to become excessively powerful in this world, you'd probably go out and become one of the most famous people in history. However, at the beginning of our story, our main character quickly realizes that this would actually be against his greater interest. When he's at home watching the news and thinking about how he should probably get a proper reevaluation, Jinwoo reconsiders when he thinks about how his reawakening will become a massive topic on social media and the news if it's revealed. Because in the Solo Leveling world, hunters have pretty much taken over the role of celebrities and movie stars at the top of the social class. This comes with benefits, since the more attention a hunter has, the more likely they'll be able to work with a notable guild or get high-paying contracts. But for Jinwoo specifically, if people were to learn that his ability allowed him to continuously get stronger by leveling up more and more, there might be a massive uproar as people try to figure out his ability, and even worse, those who are jealous or might want to plot against him would start to appear, and this is why. In Solo Leveling before episode 1, there's actually someone responsible for everything that happens to Sung Jinwoo in the entire series, and that's the man who gave our main character his powers. In the Hunter Association, one of the jobs is assessing which hunters go out to which teams, especially for E and D rank hunters who get more or less rented out to guilds and raid teams by the agency. It's here where we learn of a nameless nobody within the association who one day received a call from a raid party complaining that they were sent Sung Jinwoo and that he was useless. Thinking it's some kind of error, he checks Jinwoo's files and sees that he practically dies in almost every one of his missions, but as he looks deeper, he realizes that Jinwoo goes in the dungeon to put food on the table and provide shelter for him and his sister, since neither of their parents are around anymore. After a talk of his boss where he at first wants to ask Jinwoo to quit, he realizes that instead he wants to support him, and this leads to him pairing Jinwoo with Jinhee, the B rank healer, where eventually he'd get his powers in the same dungeon as her. And to think this series wouldn't have happened without this one guy's help. In solo leveling, the world is filled with mana thanks to the awakening of hunters in the various dungeons and gates opening all around the world on any given day, but as much as a gift as these powers are to some, they can absolutely be a detriment to others. One prime example is the eternal slumber disease, a disease that began appearing after the emergence of gates in Jinwoo's world. Thanks to the abundance of mana leaking out into Earth, or even just the presence of someone with strong enough mana, some people who are intolerant to mana in the same way that someone would be intolerant to the lactose in milk actually faces way worse symptoms than just having irritable bowels. A mana intolerant human typically starts to feel drowsy more often throughout the day when symptoms first appear, and eventually they'll fall into a deep sleep where they'll either be hooked up to machines and kept alive never to wake up again, or their families will let them go. No one has ever woken up from eternal slumber, and what's worse is that the life support machines are special and very expensive, so before he goes broke, Sung Jinwoo needs to save his mother, and who he promised to take care of his sister while she's gone. In solo leveling, once Sung Jinwoo hits a certain level, the player level system notifies him that it's time to take part in his job change quest, and for those of you who don't play RPGs, your job is basically your class or the kind of player that you are in the game, so it's an incredibly important decision. For Jinwoo, after working hard enough to earn it, he's finally given the location of a dungeon made specifically for him to advance to the first rank of his job, and as he walks into the portal thinking that it's time for things to get serious, we see the silhouette of an armored knight with a long red feather hanging from its helmet, as the author lets us know that the entire manhwa is about to pick up pace. But before Jinwoo can get to the bottom of who exactly that was, he finds himself in a tight hallway fighting armored soldiers that take no damage from his dagger, so he figures that he can just use his raw strength to rip the guards apart, which he begins to do so as he slays knight after knight. Now, the most dangerous thing about this dungeon is, unlike any others, Jinwoo can't access his inventory or built-in item shop for potions, and if he levels up, his health won't heal back to full like it usually does. On top of all of this, Sung Jinwoo realizes he didn't complete his daily quest yet, so he needs to get this done or else he'll face a penalty as the job change quest continues. In solo leveling, we've explained how Sung Jinwoo enters a dungeon using a key given to him as a reward, and in the dungeon he comes up against wolves and a giant snake, but eventually he comes away with the win and even an awesome new weapon. After a job well done, you'd think that he would go home and rest, but immediately upon leaving the station, Jinwoo experiences his first dungeon break, as nearby a crew of hunters are battling against a giant blue energy-filled golem, and their team is falling apart in front of a large crowd of bystanders watching. This could turn out really bad really quickly. However, in the crowd, Jinwoo watches and notices the entire party is entirely made up of D and E ranks without any powerhouses, so obviously they're gonna lose, until he sees Jinhee, the B-ranked healer from the double dungeon in episode 1, and remembers how often her healing alone kept him alive even in the worst situations. It's here where Jinwoo decides to act as he throws his broken sword as hard as he can at the golem, and while they think that they're doing something, it completely shatters in one hit, leaving Jinwoo surprised at just how strong he might have gotten after that dungeon, and as he leaves, Junhee stands there confused at how Jinwoo just did that. In solo leveling, after awakening his powers and doing some grinding in his own personal dungeon, Sung Jinwoo has been gaining experience for quite a few battles, and it's finally time to level up. But click the related video to see what his stats were before this. So for level 18, Sung Jinwoo's character sheet is updated to reflect the stat bonuses he's gotten from every level, which by default adds 1 to every attribute he has when he levels up, and brings his intelligence, vitality, agility, and sense up to a score of 27 each. This improvement in vitality and intelligence gives Jinwoo a total of 350 mana, which is a 250 point bump from level 1, and his health points have also increased tremendously from 100 points to 2,220 HP. This is largely due to the bonus to health that he gets every time that he puts points into his strength skill, which by level 18 is sitting at a 48 total score, meaning right now Jinwoo is building for an all-strength archetype. Just know that by this point already early on in the series, Sung Jinwoo has at minimum already gone up from E-class to at least in the realm of B-class when it comes to offense, so keep your eyes on him before you miss him becoming a god. In solo leveling, while Sung Jinwoo was testing out his powers and starting to figure out how they work in Korea, out in America on the US East Coast, an interesting development is taking place. In the series, we've already met Jinwoo's mom, who was stuck in an eternal slumber that she's never expected to wake from. However, it's a different story with Jinwoo's dad, who disappeared within a dungeon many years ago, leaving the family behind and causing the mom to never want to move from their house into a nicer one in the hopes that he'll one day return, since no one has actually gone completely missing in a dungeon before. That brings us back to America, where inside of an A-rank dungeon, an entire crew of hunters is completely taken out, leaving only one awake and in complete shock, as he says that they were all taken down by a human-shaped monster with mana stronger than the entire A-rank dungeon. This man-shaped monster tries to speak to the hunter, but he can't understand a word and continues to panic. However, thankfully, we don't have to learn Korean to learn what he said, as we find out that not only is this somehow the father of Sung Jinwoo, now returned after all this time, but he actually appeared within this dungeon somehow completely empty of any monsters or bosses, and since this is the first time this has ever happened, he's gonna have a lot to go through before he even has a chance at meeting his son again. 1,000 likes for part 2. In solo leveling, after Sung Jinwoo thinks about the dangers of revealing his powers to the world, he struggles to think about how he'll earn any money, and this is where online he finds an ad for a strike force that needs an E-rank hunter to carry their bags, so he signs up and we cut to him arriving on their first day of raiding. Now a strike force is pretty much a team made up of the strongest members of a guild, but it can also just be an arranged team of hunters put together by either the association or by themselves using ads to get the required amount of people to enter and clear a dungeon. When Jinwoo enters his first one, he's quickly introduced to the leader Hwang Dongsoo, and off rip this guy comes across as really nice as he defends Jinwoo from other hunters who call him the weakest and joke about him. And he even tells Jinwoo that he'll pay 2 million won just for Jinwoo to be there and fill up their member count for the raid. So Jinwoo signs a contract and looks around to read everyone's power levels using his sense skill, where he determines that at most they have 5 C ranks and 4 lower than D rank. Knowing his skill, he knows that it'll be possible no matter what the other hunters do, given that it's just a C rank dungeon and he's already cleared a B rank. So as Sung Jinwoo prepares for his next battle, a young man walks up and introduces himself. In solo leveling, when Jinwoo unlocks a secret quest after hitting the required level, he goes right in and figures out how to defeat the Night Setter in his way. However, after taking a short break to pick up a bunch of their items and arm himself for the rest of the dungeon, he's quickly attacked by a group of mages using spells to completely hide their presence, as he realizes that this dungeon is recreating some of his past battles, so it must be testing him. And test him it does, as he notices that there's such a huge variety to the enemies here that he needs to utilize different stats to take out different opponents, and it's making him wish he didn't just focus on strength. The night continues on as Jinwoo keeps battling and his fatigue stat starts to go higher and higher, but it'll take him out of the picture for a while if it reaches 100. Feeling tired, our MC tries to sleep for a while inside the dungeon, but gets interrupted by a horde of archers, and it finally sinks in that there's no rest and no breaks here. Just pure, raw battle. As he powers through even the archers, he finally manages to find enough items to give him a full body's worth of different bonuses to defense and various stats, but feeling like it's time to bring this to an end, Jinwoo finally enters the boss's room and finds Igris. In solo leveling, when Sung Jinwoo enters his first attack force to try and do a C-rank dungeon, he knows that he's only there to get paid and fill the slots for the raid. But as he's planning on just getting the job done and not getting attached, a young man about his age walks up to him and catches his attention with his ridiculous outfit. This boy is a D-rank hunter named Yoo Jin-ho, but he stands out like a sore thumb from everyone else because he's completely decked out in rare shining armor and weapons, making Jinwoo question if he's the son of a millionaire or something. This hunter, who is clearly somewhat of an idiot, is one of the characters you could expect to stick around for quite some time in the solo leveling series, as he's one of Jin's closest friends and one of the only people he can actually trust at the end of the day. However, that's all going to depend on how Jinwoo handles this upcoming situation, because even though him and Yoo Jin-ho are entering an easy C-rank dungeon, sometimes there are things even more dangerous than the monsters you find, and it's time for our characters to learn a very big lesson about trust. In solo leveling, after Sung Jinwoo enters his first strike force, we see him entering a dungeon with his new friend and some shady guys that say they don't have a healer, and in the anime this is actually fleshed out quite a bit as Jinwoo enters the dungeon and immediately sniffs out that they're in an insect dungeon, which saves everyone as they're surrounded by ants but are able to react calmly thanks to Jinwoo's information. Now this actually goes pretty smoothly, but having gotten really strong already this early on in the series, you could see how being in here with these guys will actually be pretty annoying for someone like our main character, who by now could probably run through this entire dungeon alone and not really face any threat. As they continue through the dungeon, Jinwoo starts to suspect something is wrong, but little did people know he actually made a massive mistake coming into the dungeon with these people, because despite the fact that everyone here is underestimating him due to his E-rank status, it seems like Hwang Dongsoo and his party have nasty plans for our main character during this raid. In solo leveling, after entering a dungeon alongside a new strike force just so he can earn a little money, things immediately start to look really fishy to Sung Jinwoo as he realizes that something has to be off about these new people that he's met. As the group ventures through the dungeon, Jinwoo thinks about how these guys say they do dungeons like these all the time, however they don't have a healer and needed to recruit 2 members, which means every time they do a dungeon, 2 people mysteriously don't make it out. This makes him extremely suspicious, and his suspicions are confirmed once they get into the boss area, and despite the fact that he has all of the mining equipment with him, the group pretends like they left it behind so they can leave Jinwoo and his Class D friend in the room alone with the boss. As they leave, they cave in the tunnel behind them, and it's revealed that their plan is to leave 2 people inside with the boss to feed it and make it sleepy so they can come back in and mine the rest of the ore themselves and make a killing on the aftermarket without any worries about being investigated, since cases like this are extremely common during raids. Actions like this are exactly what you can expect from a team of lizards, which is what you call people who abandon others like they were the tail of a lizard. However, now we have to talk about what happens when Jinwoo ends up one-on-one with the boss spider. In solo leveling, after entering a dungeon alongside a new strike force just so he can earn a little money, things immediately start to look really fishy to Sung Jinwoo as he realizes that something has to be off about these new people that he's met. As the group ventures through the dungeon, Jinwoo thinks about how these guys say they do dungeons like these all the time, however they don't have a healer and needed to recruit 2 members, which means every time they do a dungeon, 2 people mysteriously don't make it out. This makes him extremely suspicious, and his suspicions are confirmed once they get into the boss area, and despite the fact that he has all of the mining equipment with him, the group pretends like they left it behind so they can leave Jinwoo and his Class D friend in the room alone with the boss. As they leave, they cave in the tunnel behind them, and it's revealed that their plan is to leave 2 people inside with the boss to feed it and make it sleepy so they can come back in and mine the rest of the ore themselves and make a killing on the aftermarket without any worries about being investigated, since cases like this are extremely common during raids. Actions like this are exactly what you can expect from a team of lizards, which is what you call people who abandon others like they were the tail of a lizard. However, now we have to talk about what happens when Jinwoo ends up one-on-one with the boss spider. In solo leveling, we've been introduced to the character of Hwang Dongsoo, who's the leader of the traitorous lizard squad that betrays Sung Jinwoo in his first C-rank dungeon, but overseas there's actually a much more important character waking up with a headache the morning after Jin enters his dungeon, and that would be the brother of Hwang Dongsoo, Hwang Dongsoo. This S-rank hunter is extremely powerful, and he's actually a big shot over in America after leaving Korea and leaving his brother behind, who we said was too weak to ever make a name for himself. This relationship is what caused Hwang Dongsoo to be such an a-hole and start betraying people in dungeons so he could amass tons of wealth and impress his bro. However, when this gets him killed by Jinwoo, Hwang Dongsoo is really quick at figuring out that someone must have taken out his brother, and all the way from America he puts all the pieces together to determine that this was Sung Jinwoo's doing, since only him and Yoo Jin-ho survived the spider dungeon. Expect him to make his way to Korea to try to confront our main character, but before these two ever meet, this guy is going to have a serious effect on Jin's life as he has a chance meeting of Sung Il-hwan, the father of Jinwoo. In solo leveling, we've talked about how Sung Jinwoo's father is a mysterious figure that disappeared in a dungeon years ago, but now has suddenly returned through another dungeon in America. And as Jin is in Korea mastering his powers, his father is stuck in an interview room with Hwang Dongsoo as they try to figure out if this man is a magic beast or not based on their interview. Right away, Hwang finds it funny that this man or beast knows Korean, since of course he himself isn't from America either, and he's actually the brother of the shifty guy we met in episode 5 leading Jin's new strike force. And that's exactly the problem here, because this guy has a really good reason for not liking Sung Jinwoo, and over the course of his conversation with Sung Il-hwan, he realizes that this is Jin's father, so he makes it his mission to keep this man from going home at any cost. Being an expert hunter, Jin's dad picks up on exactly what's going on here as he threatens Hwang to let him leave, but when their egos begin to clash, nothing could have possibly stopped them from battling, which they do, as Jinwoo's father shows the S rank there's still levels he hasn't reached. In solo leveling, as Jinwoo faces off against the giant king of spiders, Great Arachnid Buryura, he realizes that he's starting to actually get pretty fatigued as the battle has gone on for over 10 minutes and the boss is only getting more and more ferocious. So right here, right now, he has to bring this to an end. Jinwoo activates his sprint skill, and in his max speed, he hits the giant spider everywhere he can. You see, Jinwoo is struggling to do any actual damage, but if he's able to successfully proc the paralyze or bleed skills that his dagger has, that should make this way easier. So he starts peppering the spider with wounds all over, but isn't able to get a critical hit as much as he tries. Things start to look desperate as his fatigue level nearly reaches its limit, meaning Jinwoo would be unable to move for a long time and would basically become food. But right at the perfect moment, he remembers that he actually never accepted the rewards for his daily quest, so when he says status recovery accept, he's instantly healed back up to 100% and refreshed completely, which allows him in an instant to spiral up the spider's leg and shove his dagger in its eye, where finally his paralyzed ability activates and Jinwoo gets his first critical hit. In solo leveling, Sung Jinwoo speed blitzes a giant enemy spider boss and ends up right in its face as he pierces it in its eyes over and over again, repeatedly activating his paralyze and bleed conditions on his dagger. Now, if you remember, the bleed condition his dagger produces makes the enemy lose 1% of its health every second, meaning this fight is now on a timer and should be over within the next minute. As Jinwoo slashes away, Yoo Jin-ho looks horrified at what he's seeing as he prays that Jinwoo isn't a false ranker and is actually on his side, but as Jinwoo's dagger barrage comes to its end, we see him land on the ground behind the king of spiders as he hits a really sick pose and the spider begins to splatter everywhere as it falls. As the boss is defeated, Jin thinks to himself that he's really lucky that he didn't accept his quest rewards before, and he should probably stock up on those for situations exactly like this, meaning he's gained a really useful tactic from this encounter with the boss and the lizards that is only going to make him more invincible in the future. However, things aren't over because despite the fact that the boss is dead, it's now time to deal with those disgusting traitors that lock Jinwoo in this dungeon, and beyond that, it's finally time to level up. In solo leveling, after getting trapped in the spider boss room by the lizards, as the giant king of the spiders starts to head towards him, Jinwoo summons his dagger from his inventory and calmly walks towards the creature before suddenly, in a burst of speed, he disappears as you watch him begin to shred the monster from mouth to abdomen with a series of slashes from his dagger. Jinho is absolutely losing it as he watches Jin continue this battle, because from his perspective this is supposed to be an E-rank hunter, which makes him worry that Jin is actually a false ranker who is tricking everyone and just lives to kill. Now what's amazing here is Jin is just too fast for this thing, as every time it tries to attack him he easily dodges it and is able to get a hit in, but in most places on its body it actually has some pretty thick skin, so he's not able to get lasting or impactful damage of the Rasaka Fang dagger. But knowing that this is still just a giant spider, Jinwoo considers the legs one of its strongest attributes and realizes if he's able to cut them apart, this entire battle will get much easier. So as he goes for this, we see the boss start to realize it might actually be in danger as it spews a giant wave of toxic venom towards our main character that's so acidic it even burns through the rock in the cave. But not being discouraged, Jinwoo dives right back in for more. In solo leveling, after Jinwoo accepts his job change quest and levels up enough to finally reach the boss room, he opens a large door and steps into a large empty chamber with a throne and instantly gets a shiver across his entire body as if it was screaming to him that he shouldn't be there. At that second, a large figure in all red armor walks forward ominously towards our main character as for the first time Sung Jinwoo meets the blood red commander, Igris. Now if you recall, the redder a creature's name is, the more dangerous they are for Jinwoo to fight at his current level, and for Igris, Jinwoo says he's never seen a name as blood red as that, so he knows he's in real danger before the first attack is even sent his way. When Igris attacks, it does so by charging forward towards Jin with a large greatsword in one hand, and thankfully he's able to narrowly dodge its swing, because when he does, the entire area behind him gets destroyed like a disaster passed through it. As Jin starts to fight back, we see that his brand new daggers aren't capable of piercing Igris's armor at all, as the warrior sends another powerful slash towards Jinwoo that causes him to dodge once more. But Igris is on Jin's head as he pierces through the smoke, nearly taking Jinwoo's head off, and our main character realizes he might have made a mistake by entering this dungeon. In solo leveling, after defeating the giant king of spiders, Sung Jinwoo levels up, and this is a good point of the story to take a look at how he's advancing. So first off, Jinwoo is still focusing heavily on strength, so he's raised his strength to a total of 53, and we're starting to see him put points in other stats, like how his agility is now a 38 and his sense score is a 32, which makes it 2 points higher than his vitality and intelligence points. At this level, Jinwoo is still at level 1 with his tenacity and sprint skills, but he's well on his way towards leveling those up. But besides the fact that defeating C-rank dungeons should now actually be really easy for him, being level 21 means Sung Jinwoo should be able to easily deal with pretty much any lesser known hunter that steps to him, with only those in the high B ranks and above being any sort of threat to him. Now it may not seem like the couple of levels he's gained since our last level up short made that much of a difference, however it's around level 21 where we really start to see some of that dark energy that Jinwoo has building up and starting to leak out. And this dark electricity like power not only makes Jinwoo look really cool, but it's a sign of things to come, as while he's leveling up, he's secretly working towards a brand new power. In solo leveling, we've seen that Sung Jinwoo has an inventory that he can fill up with various things like weapons, but on that subject, how exactly does our MC choose which weapon he uses, and are there other options? Well, during Jinwoo's job change quest, we see him realize that the Rasaka dagger he got from defeating the snake isn't going to be enough to pierce Igris, so he opens his gamer menu up and discovers that there's actually a shop feature inside that lets him buy all sorts of items using money that he's accumulated from killing monsters and clearing dungeons. Now you'd think that when trying to take down a knight with incredibly strong armor that he would go for something way bigger like a great axe, but instead what he does is he buys a weapon called the Night Killer Dagger, which is worth 2.8 million gold. And this thing is definitely worth the price because it adds a plus 75 attack bonus, but on top of that it has a bonus specifically against armored opponents that gives Jinwoo another 25% additional damage on any attacks he does with it. This B-class item is going to stick with our main character for a long time, but if it isn't obvious at this point, he's a little bit of a dagger fanboy, so don't expect Jinwoo to start busting out tons of different weapon types because our boy clearly has a favorite. In solo leveling, after meeting Commander Igris, the boss of Jinwoo's job change quest, he realizes that this thing is way too powerful and durable for his daggers to have any effect on it, so he throws him to the side and decides raw strength is the way forward. And after looking confused for a second, the boss actually surprises Jinwoo by putting its massive greatsword to the side as well, as it drops all of its accessories alongside with it to fight Jinwoo on his own terms, hand to hand, man to man. Jinwoo says, "Don't think that I'm weak," as Igris dives in towards him and punches him right in the throat before grabbing him by his hood and slamming him into the throne in the center of the room. And as Jinwoo gets hit, he notes that even though he's wearing a full set of invisible armor, he's still losing hundreds of hit points at a time, so he can't imagine how fast this would have been over if he had none on. Rethinking his strategy, he decides maybe speed will be how he overcomes this threat, and as he activates his sprint ability, which raises his speed by 30%, he rushes down on the boss, but it's quickly obvious even here he can only match Igris, as they both throw 1,000 punches and meet each other on the opposite end of every one. And in that moment when Jinwoo is starting to think this is impossible, an opportunity approaches. In solo leveling, one of the things we're going to start seeing more and more over the course of the series are hunter skills, which are abilities that certain hunters have that are unique to them or their class based on the type of abilities that they have. For Sung Jinwoo, we've already seen a few of the skills he has as part of his gamer system, like his sprint ability, which raises his speed by 30%. However, there are some other really awesome and useful skills in the series, like Kang Tae-Shik's stealth skill, which completely lets him erase his presence in every way. Jinwoo himself gets some pretty amazing skills as the story goes on, like his Dominator's touch ability, which pretty much acts as an invisible mage hand that he can use to use telekinesis on various objects or even grab lesser opponents and bring them closer to him or manipulate them in various ways. Skills aren't something you'll see on extremely weak hunters, and even when you do see a skill on a D or C rank hunter, definitely keep in mind that somewhere out there is an A or S rank hunter that has a way better version of that skill. If you want to learn every skill Jinwoo gets over the course of the series, let me know by getting this video to 1,000 likes and we'll discuss them all in a short. In solo leveling, we're introduced to a few of the biggest guild masters in Korea throughout the early episodes, some of which we've already done shorts explaining. However, just what is a guild master and what does their job entail? Well, first off, to become a guild master, you need to learn all of the rules and regulations that come with being a hunter like the back of your hand. And once that's done, the first step to actually getting a guild started is to complete 20 dungeons of your own personal strike force. Now, this is easier said than done because as we've seen over the course of the series so far, even clearing lower ranked dungeons can be really difficult for most of your common hunters, and for a new guild, common hunters is pretty much all you're going to get, as the more reputable hunters have already signed with other guilds. Now, there's actually a great incentive for someone in this universe to lead a guild instead of joining one if they don't have the power to complete dungeons, because like we've mentioned, there are tons of extremely valuable objects inside these raids, from monster crystals to mana crystals, and a person can easily get filthy rich from having a surefire way to farm and sell these materials. So just know when you see a guild leader in this series, they're probably as rich as the Kardashians or even more. In solo leveling, one of the things we're going to start seeing more and more over the course of the series are hunter skills, which are abilities that certain hunters have that are unique to them or their class based on the type of abilities that they have. For Sung Jinwoo, we've already seen a few of the skills he has as part of his gamer system, like his sprint ability, which raises his speed by 30%. However, there are some other really awesome and useful skills in the series, like Kang Tae-Shik's stealth skill, which completely lets him erase his presence in every way. Jinwoo himself gets some pretty amazing skills as the story goes on, like his Dominator's touch ability, which pretty much acts as an invisible mage hand that he can use to use telekinesis on various objects or even grab lesser opponents and bring them closer to him or manipulate them in various ways. Skills aren't something you'll see on extremely weak hunters, and even when you do see a skill on a D or C rank hunter, definitely keep in mind that somewhere out there is an A or S rank hunter that has a way better version of that skill. If you want to learn every skill Jinwoo gets over the course of the series, let me know by getting this video to 1,000 likes and we'll discuss them all in a short. In solo leveling, as Jinwoo is struggling his hardest against Igris, the Blood Red Commander, it walks up to Jinwoo as he sits in the throne it threw him onto, and Igris summons his sword back into his hands, and with one fell swoop, he swings down, meaning to end Jinwoo's journey right here, right now. However, he's shocked when our main character looks up and actually catches Igris' sword, and this is all thanks to a pair of gloves he picked up while farming monsters outside of the boss room, called the High Knight's Gauntlet, which completely prevents any and all hand-based injuries to him while he has them on. Before Igris can react, Jinwoo uses this shock to ram his dagger into the knight's helmet, causing it to fall backwards and try to pull it out, but it's too slow as Jinwoo recalls his dagger back into his inventory and lets off one final attack into the neck of this giant knight as his critical hit continues to activate when he decides to attack over and over again. Finally, he watches as the red knight falls to its knees with white blood dripping from its helmet, and now that he's finally defeated the boss, the entire story is about to change forever. In solo leveling, when Sung Jinwoo defeats the giant spider boss and Hwang's evil group of hunters finally re-enters the cave to see what happened, all of them immediately let loose a sense of bloodlust towards our main character as they ask Yu Jin-ho to join their group only because he's rich, but under no circumstance are they planning on letting Jinwoo live. This is unfortunate for them because little did they know there's actually a secret program within Jinwoo's gamer system that gives him emergency quests during really specific situations, and one of the most common situations for these emergency quests to appear is when someone truly wants to kill Sung Jinwoo and puts him in a position where he has to defend himself. This is exactly what happens when he's attacked by these lizard hunters, as the system gives him the quest of killing all 6 of these guys and not leaving anyone behind. And the problem is, even if Jinwoo didn't want to get these guys back for the trouble that they put him through, he'd have to complete the quest because if not, his heart will stop. So that's the reason Jinwoo says the system is using him and he's using the system, because they're both shaping each other into what they want the other to be. In solo leveling, after Hwang's group of hunters confronts Jinwoo in the spider dungeon, one of them gets a little too close as he tries to tell Jinwoo that the weakest hunter has no hope against them. But he eats his words seconds later when our MC drops his throat and everything beside it onto the ground using a well-placed slash from his dagger. Jinwoo walks forward and tells them that since they were so happy being hunters, that means they understood the possibility that they would one day be hunted, right? As he begins to count down through the members of the guild while he cuts through them easily, leaving Hwang in the background getting more and more scared, as finally, when he's the final member of the group left, he activates his ability and forces Jinwoo Jinwoo to pay attention to only him in exchange for a defense and attack boost. But Jinwoo grabs him by the face, telling him that he actually was pretty strong, but that means nothing in the face of someone constantly leveling up, as Jinwoo reveals his biggest secret to this man who begs for his life and tells Jinwoo his brother will never let this slide. But since Jinwoo just killed one of his emotions to win this fight, he doesn't care and ends Hwang right there where he lays as a new scandal begins. In solo leveling, after finally defeating Igris, the Blood Red commander, Jinwoo was judged on his performance in his job change quest that this entire dungeon was centered around. And even if something weird didn't happen, he would have gotten a good class, but because of an interesting circumstance where Jinwoo actually forgot to do his daily quest that day, he was actually sent to the penalty dungeon for a full 24 hours, where he was able to use items, refresh himself, and even buy a few weapons that came in handy during this battle. The good thing is that this time that Jinwoo spent inside of the penalty dungeon also counted towards the time that he spent inside of the job change quest, and given that he's handed extra points and a better job for every minute he stayed inside, it's no surprise that when it's time for Sung Jinwoo to unlock his first job, he's given the highest grade of necromancer there is, and finally receives the title of Shadow Monarch, as the shadows that fill the room all start to reach towards him and fill his body, and Jinwoo awakens his most important power ever. In solo leveling, after defeating the final boss of his job change quest, Igris, he's given a new power that we'll be discussing quite a bit on this channel. Jinwoo starts to hear a light scream coming from the empty shells of armor that he'd already defeated, as a message window from the game pops up telling him that an ability called Shadow Extraction is available to be used on these targets. But Jinwoo isn't able to use it yet because he hasn't chosen a keyword. That's when, for the very first time, he speaks the famous words, "Arise." And we see shadows spilling out of every suit of armor in the room, as the room fills with an army of shadow soldiers before Jinwoo that are all under his control. Now, as cool as these soldiers are, Jinwoo has his eyes on the real prize as he walks up to Commander Igris and says, "Arise." However, a burst of energy sends him flying back, as it seems like the command was rejected. With 2 chances remaining, Sung Jinwoo tries once more, but again he fails to extract the shadow of the legendary knight in front of him. Finally, on the third and final try, Jinwoo puts his hand out and tells Igris to start protecting someone that's actually there for him, as he says "Arise" for one last time, and shadows pour out of Igris' armor as Igris officially joins Jinwoo as his first boss summon, Igris, the Commander of Shadows. In solo leveling, after Sung Jinwoo awakens his Shadow Monarch powers for the first time and gets to use them to get an amazing new ally in all of his battles moving forward, he has the same questions that many of you do, which is how exactly these powers work. Well, as part of Jinwoo's necromancy class, he's given the ability to summon the souls of the dead and bring them back as shadowy warriors completely under his control, thanks to a skill called Shadow Extraction. When Jinwoo doesn't want a shadow to just be standing there in front of him, he can send them away to a place called the World of Nothing, which we'll talk about a lot more way further down the line. But another option Jinwoo has is to completely cancel his bond with any of these shadows and pretty much send them to rest, where he'll never be able to retrieve them. Now, the most interesting thing about Jinwoo's Shadow Extraction ability is that he only has 3 tries to capture any specific creature and turn it into a summon, and it seems like the rate of success is dependent on Jinwoo's bond with the creature, but even if he convinces their spirit somehow, that doesn't mean it's going to work with 100% certainty. Jinwoo's Shadow Control is the ability that we'll see him use the most in the series, and next we'll explain how Jinwoo's shadows level up and the different tiers within his army. In solo leveling, after defeating the 6 hunters that betrayed him inside of the spider dungeon, thanks to the fact that Jinwoo was given an emergency quest to defeat them, he was actually given some pretty awesome rewards for defending himself, and I guess this time the game wanted to be thematically appropriate because the best reward he gets from this battle is the Bloodlust skill stone, something Jinwoo activates to give himself the Bloodlust skill. So here's what it does. First off, Bloodlust is a skill that Jinwoo probably wouldn't want to have activated too long, since it takes 100 mana to activate, and once he does, it places a strong fear on the selected target, which puts them in a state of fear for 1 minute that lowers all their stats by 50%. So basically, Jinwoo can give you a mean look that makes you half the man you usually are. However, the way that this fear represents itself can be different for different enemies, like how some just see a hallucination of Jinwoo in a pool of infinite shadows, as the eyes of some of his strongest shadows watch his opponent sink into pure darkness. The most broken thing about this skill is the fact that he can target multiple opponents at once, but next we'll talk about one of Jinwoo's most broken abilities. In solo leveling, there's a secret that only a few characters know, and that's apparently that hunters have a secret smell that they produce from their bodies, but according to the ones who can smell it, this scent really stinks. We pick up on this by paying attention to Cha Hae-in's story over the course of solo leveling, but a good example is during the training arc between different groups of hunters, where Cha Hae notices that Jinwoo smells different from everyone else, and even him just being around causes the air to feel different. Over in Japan, there's another hunter named Kay, and when he's in this room, even though he has a gas mask on, which is meant to filter the outside air, he says that he can barely breathe because of the amount of S-rank hunters in the room, due to just how horrible the scent is. Now, this whole thing of sense and no sense is only going to be really important for Cha Hae-in and Jinwoo's story together as the story goes on, so you don't have to pay too much attention to it, but just remember, no matter how cool a character looks in this series, they're smelly. In solo leveling, when the series started, we saw Sung Jinwoo get a few different abilities from the gamer system. However, one of his skills was mysteriously left unexplained, so let's go into what exactly it does. First off, if you remember, Jinwoo was given a secret quest called Courage of the Weak in his first dungeon, but when he passed it, he was given the hidden ability, Great Spellcaster Kendiaru's Blessing. This is a blessing passed down onto Jinwoo that is meant to ensure that he'll always remain healthy and strong throughout his life. This reward is also what healed up the limbs that he lost at that time, but aside from that temporary effect, it has the permanent effect on Jinwoo's body that makes him immune to all diseases, poisons, and negative status effects. On top of this, any damage that Jinwoo takes will be healed at an explosive rate if he falls asleep, since it sends his regeneration ability into overdrive. With this, in most situations, Jinwoo should be able to make it out without any bad scars or anything weakening him in the next battle, but I suppose like Deadpool or Logan, one of the worst things about this is Jinwoo can't get drunk and have a good time with friends. In solo leveling, we've seen some pretty huge scumbag hunters already getting sliced apart by Jinwoo. However, lizard-like hunters like these aren't the only ones you have to worry about in a dungeon, because there's also a class of hunters that you might be surprised to see fighting alongside you. In this series, there's a job called a rehabilitator, and this is basically a hunter from the association that works with criminals that have been sent to prison but are otherwise noteworthy for their awakened abilities and can still be used to protect Korea from the threat of dungeons. These guys are all brought to dungeons so they can more or less work off their time. However, as you can expect, none of them are genuinely good people, and this is especially thanks to the person leading them. In the first few episodes of the series, we met the B-rank hunter Kang Tae-Shik, who works alongside Woo Jin Chul, and we'll be seeing him again really soon in the anime, as his rehabilitator not only joins Jinwoo in a dungeon, but he brings along a whole gang of criminals with him, making things really tense as a new dungeon begins. In solo leveling, we've discussed how certain hunters can make a lot of money just by joining a guild and going into dungeons to retrieve monster and mana crystals. However, really early on in his career, Sung Jinwoo hits the jackpot when a ridiculous offer comes his way, and it's all thanks to his actions in these first few episodes of the anime. You see, when Jinwoo saves Yoo Jin-ho from the insect dungeon and those evil hunters, he actually made a friend for life who has some pretty good connections in the hunter world thanks to his family. This rich boy wants to know if Sung Jinwoo would ever consider starting a guild with him, and after a little negotiation and some back and forth, it's decided that Jinwoo will help Yoo Jin-ho with 19 more dungeons because you need 20 to get a guild started. But the payment that he asked for is 3 billion won, which is just an astronomical price, especially when you consider that Jinwoo was telling him that he more or less wants to do the dungeons alone, with just some weaker hunters there on the sidelines to pad out the numbers. But once Yoo Jin-ho agrees to this, Jinwoo starts on the path to having his own guild and $3 billion to mess around with. In solo leveling, after doing his daily quest, Jinwoo realizes that if he doubles up on what the quest requires him to do, then it became a hidden quest capable of giving him a special reward. Once he completes his super training, he's given a blood red key that supposedly goes to a S-rank reward dungeon made specifically for Jinwoo, and right away when he uses this key, you can tell something is up as a big fiery gate appears in front of him that he then walks through into a burning hellscape version of Korea that is constantly on fire. What's worse is inside of the dungeon, he isn't going to find any insects or goblins, but instead this is an entire world within this dungeon filled to the brim with demons, demon clans, and multiple levels of boss enemies. In this dungeon with 100 different floors and boss fights, Jinwoo is going to find something that he treasures more than anything else in life. However, before he begins his journey and starts doing battle with the guard dog of the very gates of hell, we'll need to describe the different classes and types of demons he'll be coming up against, so let's do that next. In solo leveling episode 7, we saw as Sung Jinwoo enter the demon castle for the very first time. However, what kind of enemies is he going to come up against and what level are they at? Well, thankfully, we have a handy chart that'll let us go through and explain the different demon classifications Jinwoo is going to find inside this dungeon. First off, demons in the demon castle are ordered as follows. We have low-ranking demons, which are the weakest in the entire dungeon, and they're all at least D class, with the rest continuing as you'd expect, with mid-ranking demons being C rank level, high-ranking demons being B rank level, and the top-ranking demons being A rank. But this is just for enemies Jin can expect to see wandering around. As he starts getting close to the boss area of each floor, he's going to run into a certain number of demon lords and demon knights, and these are much more capable enemies that he considers A+ rank, meaning they're better than the average A ranker, but they haven't quite yet reached S rank tier. Finally though, we have the actual bosses of this vast kingdom, and each of the demon nobles and intermediary bosses are S ranks themselves, making them some of the most powerful demons you could ever come across. However, at the end of the dungeon, Jinwoo fears there may be a creature even more powerful than S rank, but we're gonna have to get there to find out. After stepping into his very own private S-rank demon castle dungeon, Jinwoo was immediately met with a massive problem, as the first enemy he spots is Hell's Gatekeeper Cerberus, the first boss of the entire dungeon. Jinwoo thinks to himself that he needs to get stronger, so as he dodges an attack, he lunges all around the three-headed beast and tries to slice it apart. However, even with his Wolf Slayer skill activating and giving him a boost against this creature, Jinwoo isn't really able to do impressive damage to it, so he kicks it into high gear using his sprint or dash skill, and even busts out the murderous intent ability we recently explained on this channel. However, that might have been a massive massive mistake, because when he does this, it activates the Wrath condition on the boss, which doubles all of his stats for 3 minutes and makes this already fearsome monster into a powerhouse. As it bites down on our hero and tears a massive hole through his arm, causing him to lose nearly all of his health in just that one bite, as Jinwoo's damage reduction abilities activate to try and keep him alive. Finally though, no longer playing around, our MC activates his recovery quest reward from earlier in the day before going absolutely crazy on it until it dies, allowing Jin to level up 4 more times, and this is just the first enemy. In solo leveling, after defeating Hell's Gatekeeper Cerberus, Jinwoo was given enough EXP to level up at least 4 times, but the best part is the rewards he gets from this first area boss as far as items. First off, Jinwoo realizes that he barely survived that fight, so when he looks towards the first floor boss gate, he realizes that he'll definitely die if he keeps moving forward, so he's going to take his new items and leave, only to return a little later in the story when he's a bit more capable. Thankfully for his efforts, Jinwoo was given the Warden's Necklace item, which is an A-rank Cerberus collar that he got from the monster, which raises his ability and sense up by 20 points. Beyond this, he also gets the key to the next area of the castle that he can use whenever he comes back, and he also got a mystery class material called the Cerberus Fang that Jinwoo can likely use to create a new dagger or other items in the future if he chooses to. Now, it's a good thing that our main character hopped into this dungeon when he did, because sure, it was really difficult, but it was a really quick way to gain a few levels that he's going to need as he heads into his next dungeon, where we'll be explaining how Jinwoo is going to come across a really dangerous battle that puts his friends from episode 1 in danger all over again. In solo leveling, Sung Jinwoo had a group of hunters that he would often go on missions with, and their entire group seemed to split up as a result of the events of the first few episodes. However, when Jinwoo gets back into dungeon raiding after his own private S-rank dungeon, he stumbles upon a raid where it seems like he and all of his friends were destined to be reunited, as he arrives and immediately spots Mr. Song-chi, who, if you recall, was the amazing sword-wielding fire mage from early on. And when he sees Jinwoo, he's absolutely shocked at how much of a change the boy has made, but he's also really confused at how Jinwoo got his limbs back unlike him, something we've already explained on the channel, so go check that out. As these two continue walking, they also spot the B-rank healer Joo-hee, whose name I'm finally getting right, as she cries that they really are all back together again. Now, as they all get ready to head into a dungeon together for the first time since then, we see B-rank hunter Kang Tae-Shik appearing alongside his group of prisoners that he'll be bringing into this dungeon to try and help them work off their debt to society. But something is truly wrong with this guy, and we'll talk about that in the next part. In solo leveling, when Jinwoo enters a D-rank dungeon with his friends from the first episode, he's surprised that Mr. Kang Tae-Shik and his group of prisoners also arrive to join in on the dungeon. But when everyone enters, it seems like everything is fine as the two groups split up to cover different sides of the cave. We see for a while that the prisoners begin to take out a bunch of goblins as Mr. Song-chi uses his fire powers as he wanders through the area to take out his own group of enemies as well. Now, as Mr. Kim, the traitor from the first few episodes who left everyone behind, starts to feel bad about how he didn't apologize to Jinwoo, he wanders through the dungeon and eventually comes across Kang Tae-Shik as he beheads the last surviving prisoner, because it seems like his plan was to kill them all and pretend that it was the goblins that did it. However, since there's a witness now, he takes out his dagger and attacks Mr. Kim before speeding out into the main cavern and lunging towards Joo-hee with an attack that Sung Jinwoo surprisingly blocks. Now, with his true intentions clear in front of our group, Jinwoo tells the healer to attend to the injured as Mr. Song steps forward to protect the entire group from this bloodlusted hunter. In solo leveling, after Sung Jinwoo's group is betrayed by the evil hunter Kang Tae-Shik, instead of allowing Jinwoo to step in and handle everything alone, Mr. Song-chi wants to take responsibility for leaving everyone behind in the first dungeon and actually steps up after getting buffed by Joo-hee to use his sword and his fire powers to try and protect them all. Kang leaps right at him, causing him to block his attack using his sword, but immediately the difference between them is obvious, as despite the fact that they're both B-class, one of them is an assassin type and the other is a mage type wielding a sword. So naturally, Kang Tae-Shik, the false ranker, should outclass Song-chi in every way, from speed to strength and even reaction time. This is more or less what we see, as through a number of feints and dodges, Kang just keeps making fun of our magic swordsman before slicing open his shoulder. However, thanks to Joo-hee's healing, the battle is able to continue. When Kang tries to attack the healer, he's caught off guard by just how good Song-chi is at defending everyone, which finally causes Kang to use his secret stealth skill to go completely invisible as Jinwoo watches on the sidelines ready to step in. In solo leveling, when the B-rank hunter Kang Tae-Shik goes mad and tries to kill everyone in the tunnel, including Sung Jinwoo, Mr. Song-chi steps up. However, he's in real danger since Kang has started to use his stealth skill paired with his speed to attack the magic swordsman from every angle. As Kang tries to finish him off, out of nowhere a magic circle appears beneath him and erupts into a pillar of fire. However, when this has no effect, it starts to feel really hopeless for everyone in the room, except for Jinwoo, who flies into the way and uses his dagger to knock away Kang's attack, finally joining this fight as he promises that he'll never let another one of his friends die on his watch. And this really pisses Kang off because he has no idea how Jinwoo's even able to see his attacks, let alone block them. This leads to him asking Jin what his rank is, and when Jinwoo responds with his full name saying that he's an E rank, it gets Kang really excited because he really wants to figure out what kind of power this guy has been hiding. When Sung Jinwoo finally steps into battle Kang Tae-Shik, Kang reveals to everyone that Jinwoo must have reawakened if his power is suddenly so high after years of being pathetic. But instead of being scared of this realization, he thinks to himself that this must mean Jin doesn't have much experience with his new abilities, so he'll have to teach him a lesson as he chops him down. Jinwoo wonders why he's even doing this, as Kang explains that he got paid $3 billion to take out the prisoners and all of the hunters inside, since one of the prisoners traumatized a rich man's daughter. Because of this, he tells the others to promise that they won't speak of this and he'll even let them go, but Jinwoo says, "Yeah, right, your face says you really want to show us who's boss," as the two of them begin to clash their blades in a flash, as lightning starts to surge from our main character's eyes, and with everyone behind him, he begins a battle against a hunter really not that different from himself, at least in the way that he fights and the weapons that he uses. So let's see if Jinwoo can handle this beast. In Solo Leveling, you might recall how Jinwoo agreed to help Yu Jin-ho with creating a guild, so when he shows up to the first raid that they're all supposed to do, he looks a little confused when he sees a bunch of random people just hanging around, some of them clearly unable to fight as they either have injuries or they're just too old. Yu Jin explains that these people are all hunters that can't attend raids due to various reasons, so he drafted them to their team just to give them a little extra money and help them out, especially since they won't actually be entering the dungeon. In the crowd, there's a girl that looks really young, causing Jinwoo to ask them why they're recruiting high schoolers, as she tells him that she's an E-ranker just along for a quick cash grab. And Yu Jin puts on a brand new ridiculous armor and tells everyone the rules, before Jinwoo pushes him over and tells him that he's not going to need all of that, as from everyone else's perspective, it seemed like they walked into the gate and then took care of everything in just a few minutes, leading them to be really confused when it's time to head to the next gate as this story picks up pace. In Solo Leveling, we've described the White Tiger Guild and talked about their leader a bit. However, deep in their office building, there's a man who's been looking into Sung Jinwoo on his own and notices that Jinwoo has made it through 3 incidents safely so far as an E-rank that took out the higher rank hunters, leaving barely anyone alive. After realizing that Yu Jin-ho was also somehow involved, he thinks to himself that the Yu Jin family is probably trying to start a guild and they're likely recruiting talented hunters. But when he considers that Jinwoo cleared a C-rank dungeon as an E-ranker, he realizes this would only be possible if Jinwoo reawakened. So here we have a man who on his own was able to discover Jinwoo's biggest secret. However, he's not done yet. As Sang Min tells his assistant exactly what his theory is, he heads out to go and witness Jinwoo in action doing one of the raids he's using to start his own guild. However, when he gets there, he's confused when he sees what looks like a cookout or a family gathering, as Jinwoo walks out of the gate with the boss now dead, and Sang Min runs up to him giving him his card, as the White Tiger Guild has a unique offer to make to him for his time. In Solo Leveling, after Kang and Jinwoo clash for the first time and do some trash talking, we see Kang screaming that Jinwoo probably hasn't gone up that many ranks from E since his reawakening, as he sends a flurry of slashes down trying to break Jinwoo's dagger, but as Jinwoo times a perfect slash and thinks that he cut through Kang, behind him he hears "too slow" as he picks up his speed to match Kang in a series of clashes in the air. Now at the beginning of this battle, Kang continues to show how excited he is that he's actually able to fight someone at his level, as he makes an insane face while Jin thinks that their speed is evenly matched. But in that moment, we see Kang's smile completely fade away as their healer applies haste and other buffs to Jinwoo, making him even faster as this battle gets serious. These two tear a path through the entire cave, bouncing off of each other and walls, of neither of them being able to get significant damage on the other, but as they get close to the group of their fight, Kang sends one of his daggers flying towards the healer and this battle continues. In Solo Leveling, after throwing a dagger towards the group's healer and trying to distract Jinwoo, it's eventually deflected by Mr. Song-chi, but that doesn't really matter as it still buys Kang enough time to finally hit Jinwoo with a multitude of slashes all across his body. But to everyone's surprise, Jinwoo looks completely undamaged despite looking a little tired, as Kang comments on just how durable he is for an assassin type, while the man tries to piece together just what class Jinwoo even is, like a fun puzzle during the battle. The issue is that Kang is so bloodthirsty here, just like during the battle against the lizards, he's activated Jinwoo's emergency quest system, and now Jinwoo has no choice but to kill this man or else his heart will stop, as this truly becomes a battle of life and death, and it won't be nearly as easy as last time. On a beautiful day in Solo Leveling, we watch as Jinwoo realizes he probably should dress nice if he's going to meet his sister's teachers, so thus begins the birth of Sung Drip Woo as he gets his undercut hairstyle and starts rolling up his sleeves. This causes everyone's heads to turn inside the school. However, after a meeting of the principal, Jin learns that there's actually a student who's trying to quit because she recently awakened her abilities, so they want him to go talk to her. This is exactly what happens as Jin finds a girl and realizes she's the same one that's been going along with them to dungeons as part of his mission to start his own guild. And when he approaches her, Han Song seems to be really confused, but after getting a bit of a lecture from him, ultimately Jinwoo decides that he's actually going to help her out since he relates to how she feels as a fellow E-rank hunter. So for the first time, Jinwoo is taking on his very own student, and as a way of helping her improve, he takes her to a nearby dungeon, but at that moment there was no way for Jinwoo to know the danger that he was putting this girl in, as everything begins to go wrong. In solo leveling, after taking on his first student, Jinwoo calls up White Tiger Guild and joins a C-rank dungeon with them since they tend to test their new recruits on weaker hunters in dungeons like this, and he wants to learn how to better teach Han Song. The problem is that as Sung Jinwoo and the large attack force enter the gate, something is wrong, because as soon as Jinwoo passes through, the entire gate shifts from his usual blue color and becomes a blood red, as red electricity flies off of it, and Jinwoo is barely able to scream for the outside hunters to call for backup immediately. On the outside, they know exactly what a red gate means, so Mr. Sang-min calls the only person who could possibly handle this situation, the leader of the White Tiger Guild, Mr. Baek Yoon-ho, the White Tiger himself. The issue is that at the same time that this S-rank hunter is heading there to save Jinwoo, over at the airport we see as Hwang's brother also arrives in Korea, and his purpose is to hurt Jinwoo. So be ready for a really interesting arc where things all start to come together, but thankfully by this point Jinwoo already has his powers, so let's see what he's facing in this new mysterious dungeon. In solo leveling, we've discussed how Jinwoo stumbles upon a red gate by accident, but what even is that? Well, first off, typically red gates only appear inside of higher rank gates, and usually inside you can expect at least B rank difficulty. However, it's also possible for there to be an A rank or even an S rank red gate dungeon. Now, as we've touched on a bit, the worst part of these dungeons is the fact that once the gate turns red, the participants are stuck inside and actually can't leave in any way until they slay the boss, and this completely disrupts the usual methods that guilds use to clear dungeons. Especially because this lock goes both ways, with no one from the outside being able to enter the dungeon either. This means anyone sent into a red gate dungeon that's stronger than what they were prepared for is typically assumed dead. However, when Jinwoo gets sent into a red gate dungeon with an entire group of mostly newer or weaker hunters, it's going to take a lot of work and patience to survive for days or even weeks while he figures out how to find the boss. Did I mention 1 day inside the dungeon equals only 1 hour outside? So yeah, they're gonna be in there for a while. In solo leveling, once Jinwoo's emergency quest system activates against Kang and designates him as a target that Jin must kill, he gets serious and the two clash again in the center of the dungeon, but Jinwoo kicks it up a notch as he activates his dash skill to increase his speed by 30%, allowing him to now easily blitz Kang and knock him around a little as he cuts the side of Kang's cheek as a warning, but it just so happens that his bleed and paralysis weapon skills both activate at the same time, completely confusing the B-rank hunter who has no idea just what's going on. Eventually, he realizes that Jin has to be capable of using skills and that his dagger also has some interesting effects of its own, but once he shakes off the paralysis, he uses his own stealth skill to go completely invisible, but even like this, Jinwoo is still able to block one of his attacks. This changes quickly as Kang swoops in and cuts one of Jinwoo's tendons, forcing him to kneel down on the ground. It's here where Kang finally reveals himself again now that he thinks he's safe, because it would take really powerful healing magic to fix that, but Jinwoo shocks everyone when he heals himself back up to full with a quest reward, and this battle nears its end. In solo leveling, after healing himself back to peak condition, Jinwoo stands in the middle of the dungeon and uses his high sense score to actually counter one of Kang's invisible attacks, leading to Kang finally understanding that Jin is like him and he's actually ended a human's life before. So this causes Kang to unleash his full power and speed. However, when he does, Jinwoo with one hand blocks all of his attacks and causes him to try a head-on assault. This was clearly a bad idea as Jinwoo activates his Bloodlust ability to send a shockwave of fear directly into Kang's heart that makes him start to hallucinate himself in a dark world with Jinwoo's eyes and dark presence weighing down on him. While he's stunned like this for just a moment, he sees something moving towards him for a split second as he feels Jinwoo's dagger pierce his heart and its effects start to take root in his body. He asks Jinwoo just what is he and says that he lost fair and square, so he'll have to accept it. However, Jinwoo replies that he doesn't really know what he is anymore and maybe everyone else's way of classifying hunters doesn't really apply to him. However, there's a bigger issue that Jinwoo needs to worry about. In solo leveling, after Jinwoo gets trapped inside of a red gate dungeon, we see as the S rankers start to unite outside of this mysterious event when the leader of the White Tiger Guild, Baek Yoon-ho, first arrives in the scene and breaks down how weird it is for a red gate to open over a C rank dungeon. As the leader thinks that their only hope is probably his A rank tank named Kim, suddenly they're all met with the arrival of Hwang Dongsoo, the S ranked older brother of the hunter that Jinwoo killed after being betrayed, who pulls up wearing a polo and shades at night, so you already know he's on demon time. As soon as Baek spots him, he activates his powers and all the hair on his body turns white. However, Hwang keeps questioning him, asking where Sung Jinwoo is and if he tried to recruit him to the White Tiger Guild along with their other weaklings. After about 3 hours of waiting, tensions are rising to an edge as Mr. Sang-min slips up when lying to Hwang, causing the S-ranker to grab him by the neck in front of his leader, and of course that leads to the White Tiger himself grabbing Hwang by the arm as things start to get crazy. In the solo leveling anime, we've already met one of the A-rank hunters from the White Tiger Guild outside of his armor, but it'd be hard to tell since once he suits up, he becomes a giant of a man, as A-rank tank Kim Chul is actually really impressive. We meet him in the webtoon during the Red Gate dungeon arc, where he more or less has to take charge since he believes he's the strongest hunter there, and while it's easy to say this guy is pretty hard-headed, he's also not inherently a bad person, because he even offers to deal with the entire gate by himself, not because he's brave, but because he feels like the survival of the lower ranks is on his shoulders. In combat, Kim uses a massive Reinhardt-style warhammer with an axe on the opposite side, and with his massive frame and big shield, he's not only able to take a lot of damage, but he can also dish it out as well. Luckily for him, he has Jinwoo in the dungeon as well to back him up, something he's gonna need, as little does he know, he's completely unprepared for the massive threat in front of them. In solo leveling, after piercing Kang Tae-Shik's heart, the B-rank hunter tells Jinwoo that he'll no longer be able to hide his powers after killing him, which means that Jinwoo is truly in danger since the world is going to want to know about his reawakening. Jinwoo tells Kang that he's a hunter that gets stronger from every fight and questions him on how powerful he thinks someone like him can become, with Kang finally starting to die as he says that Jinwoo's shadow is connected to the darkness, so he'll become as strong as his shadow's depth in the dark, meaning that in this moment, he thinks Jinwoo has limitless potential. As Kang dies, the reward window for the emergency quest comes up and gives Jinwoo a +5 to any stat he wants, but in this moment Jinwoo feels like he's glad that he got stronger from this experience, but somewhere in the process he feels like he's losing something inside every time he does. Like maybe somewhere in his heart there's something being slipped away, as time and time again Jinwoo has to kill his emotions to evolve, and the more that he embraces his darkness, the more powerful it seems like he'll become. In solo leveling, after experiencing the chaos of having to fight B-rank hunter Kang Tae-Shik and the whole insect dungeon around him, it's finally time for Sung Jinwoo to level up to level 27, so let's keep tracking his stats like we have been. As first, Jinwoo increases his strength to a total of 72, and it seems like he's pretty happy with how strong he is as he raises his agility more to 82, which makes sense because even with his dash skill, he was only sorta able to keep up with the B-class hunter, and I'd want to get way faster too. Beyond this, his sensibility has now been raised to 69, nice, and that's likely to help him sense any invisible enemies that he comes across now that he has some experience in dealing with that and knows how important it is. But one thing that he doesn't understand the importance of is his intelligence score, which still rests at a low 39, and speaking of low scores, I get that he can use his status heals to bring himself back up to full health, but keeping the vitality score at 43 only gives him a total of just over 5,000 health, so he's gonna have to pump those numbers up. The best thing he got from this level up was the stealth ability that allows him to go completely invisible himself, which is gonna be used